Hello, hello, and welcome to Bitesized Podcast. I'm your host, Allie. Bitesized is a nutrition-focused podcast helping you through pregnancy, postpartum, and the solids journey with your little one. If you're joining us for the first time today, welcome. We saved you a seat at the table, so don't forget to subscribe. Welcome to today's episode. I'm so happy to have you here. I want to just continue to say thank you so much for everyone who is tuning in week after week. Our little community is growing, and I'm so very thankful. My dream is to commit to doing this full-time someday, and I can only do that with you, so thanks again. As we move into some postpartum education, we are transitioning with labor, and part of that is building your support team. Having a group of trusted people you can lean on for various needs during this time is super important. We're going to go over who those people might be, when you might want to reach out to them, and how you can start building that team. So obviously, from when you found out you were pregnant, I'm sure you chose a primary care provider. If you're not pregnant yet, this is where you'll want to start. Your main care providers that will be there during the birth in Canada are either an obstetrician, shortened to OB, an obstetrician gynecologist, shortened to OBGYN, or a midwife. Choosing midwife is definitely on the rise in Canada, but it can be very difficult to get one as they can take on far fewer clients than an OB or an OBGYN. An obstetrician, or OB, is a doctor specialized in birth and pregnancy. An OBGYN has specialized for an additional 5 years, involving all things to do with the female reproductive system, which includes pregnancy and birth. A midwife is also specially trained for pregnancy and birth. If you want a home birth, you would have to choose a midwife, and generally speaking, home births and midwives can only work for those with uncomplicated or normal pregnancies. So now you have an idea of the options available to you as your primary care provider in pregnancy. Beyond that, your support team can include many more people. So let's start with those who may have some secondary training who would assist you throughout pregnancy and into postpartum. This would include a certified nutrition consultant like myself, a lactation consultant, a doula, a pelvic floor physiotherapist, and I'm sure there's more. It totally depends on your specific needs. If you find throughout your pregnancy when your blood work is checked you are deficient in some nutrients, engaging a certified nutrition consultant would certainly be beneficial. Not only will they be able to help you increase these nutrients through food, but they could also assist you with some other symptoms you're having, such as fatigue, restless leg, swelling, whatever it might be. There is a way nutrition can help. They would also help you identify foods to increase in your diet, build personalized meal plans, and refer you to other consultants who might be able to assist, like acupuncturists or doulas. While certified nutrition consultants can also assist in some breastfeeding help, such as foods to help increase supply, tips for mastitis, or the feeding environment, some things might be best sorted with a lactation consultant. Lactation consultants can assist with latch, pumping, tongue ties, or nursing positions, and so much more. Pelvic floor physiotherapists can assist preconception throughout pregnancy and postpartum. They can assess your pelvic floor health to see if it's too tight or too loose, as well as assist with diastasis and strength after birth, or if you suffer from prolapse. We will be having a pelvic floor physiotherapist on the podcast soon to talk more about this, so stay tuned. Now, you can also have a doula on your team. Today, we actually have a doula on the podcast, our second guest here at Bitesized, so let's cheers to her and say hello. Welcome, Allie. Thank you for joining us on Bitesized. I would love for you to introduce yourself, tell us a bit about what made you become a doula, how long you've been doing it, and how many births you've attended.
Yeah, so my name is Alexandra Blanchard, or I go by Allie. I am a birth and postpartum doula and lactation counselor and childbirth educator in New York City. And I have been a birth worker for about 5 years now. And before that, I worked in psychology and I nannied for a really long time. And so my entry into the birth world was very organic in that I started working with families and children in more of like the childcare space after college, and just really fell in love with what it was to like have community and be sort of a teammate for families as they were growing and learning and figuring out their journeys. And so the first kid I ever took care of is almost 10, and since then I have worked with close to 150 families between birth and postpartum and lactation, nannying. And as of last week, I have attended 70 births.
That's amazing. It sounds very similar to like my journey into the space too. I originally started going to school to become a dietitian and then evolved and did early learning. And so I also have been heavily involved in taking care of children for a long time. And now I'm kind of switching over into like the nutrition aspect of pregnancy, postpartum, and birth. So that's really cool. I love that, life evolves this way.
Yeah, you find your path, or it finds you rather. And it's amazing when like your passions kind of have this like lateral movement throughout your life as you're, figuring out work. And it's super cheesy, but like when work doesn't feel like work, I think that's a really special thing when you're like, this is where my heart lies. And it's amazing to be able to like work with families in such a intimate and special way.
Totally. We love that. Let's begin with some basics. Could you please tell us, what is a doula?
So a doula is a support partner for families, and we offer informational, physical, and emotional support really throughout any life change. It isn't just for pregnancy and birth and postpartum. There's abortion doulas, there's death doulas. We are there as people are crossing a threshold, basically. Some people define a doula as somebody who's like trained and certified, but in my opinion, your best friend could be a doula in a lot of ways. It's really somebody that is there to witness you and support you in your unique journey as you're going through transitions and changes. And that is most commonly or most popularly described in the birth and postpartum sphere.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense. If you are looking to hire a doula, are there any specific certifications to look for?
It really depends on what your goals are. And so I think, starting your journey early in educating yourself and gathering resources is really important. We always say in the birth world, if you don't know what your choices are, you don't really have any. So learning what's important to you, if you're somebody who really wants an unmedicated birth, for example, then working with somebody who has trainings in hands-on coping techniques and hypnobirthing and mindfulness techniques and movement techniques might be really important for you. If you're really set on breastfeeding and lactating, then having somebody that has lactation experience and education is really important for you. So it's kind of different for everybody. Finding someone that really you jive with is the most important thing outside of certifications and training. Having somebody that has seen the road that you want to go down basically is the most important thing.
Amazing, amazing. When you are hiring a doula for pregnancy, what kind of things might a doula help you with throughout pregnancy?
So throughout pregnancy, we are there as like emotional and informational support first and foremost. So we are there to vent with you, to talk about hard conversations. It's crossing the threshold into parenthood is a juicy emotional space to say the least. And so having somebody there who's unbiased and understanding of where you're at and what you're going through is a really important piece of doula support. And we're also there to help with decision making. I like to say that I'm kind of the funnel for Google and all of your friends' unsolicited advice and everything like that. So I'm there to talk through what your goals might be, what your priorities might be, and help steer you informationally in the right direction. And sometimes that's finding the right care provider. Sometimes your care providers aren't in alignment with what your goals and needs are. And helping people find their path and work through their options is a really big piece of what we do during pregnancy.
And if someone wanted a doula on their team during pregnancy, how early do you think they might want to start looking for someone that they jive with?
The earlier the better, so that we have your whole journey, your whole pregnancy to build a relationship and really get to know each other intimately. Late first trimester, like I think 12 to 14 weeks is always a really good time to start talking to people and start gathering information and learning what your options and your priorities might be. It's never too late to hire a doula, but the earlier the better, because that is somebody that you want to get to know on a deeper level.
Amazing. Moving into birth a little bit here, what can doulas assist with during the birth? What might that look like?
It looks different for everybody, and I feel like that's something that I say a lot because it is, everybody's needs are unique. But a lot of times we work hand in hand with any other support partners, whether that be fathers, husbands, other family members, sisters, friends. And we are like a complementary tag team to make sure that everybody's needs are taken care of, that everybody else in the birth space is rested and nourished and hydrated. And so taking care of the birthing person first and foremost, but also making sure that the rest of the team knows what to expect, knows what might be coming, knows what's normal, knows what's not, and is taken care of and nourished on a deeper level is really important. And then, of course, there's the hands-on things. There's, comfort and coping techniques like counter pressure and massage. And then in a hospital space, or really any medical space, we're also there as sort of a translator and a liaison. Your nurses and your obstetricians and your midwives are not usually there the entire time. Your doula is the one that's usually there for the majority of your experience, keeping everybody calm, keeping everybody nourished, making sure that your preferences and your needs are listened to and adhered to. And if plans and needs change, you've got somebody there to pivot with.
I can totally see if when I give birth, my husband being the one who also needs a bit of support, because that kind of stuff makes him really anxious. Like he can't even hear the word needle and he's like, oh, So I think that that's not something everyone considers, and having someone there who's a little bit more calm throughout that experience would be very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I always say that the kind of the biggest thing that I do with partners is just like give a thumbs up from across the room sometimes, because it's hard as a partner not going through this really big physical experience, but going through the emotional experience and watching somebody you love go through something physical that you really can't fully empathize with, but you want to be there for them. And having somebody who is calm and collected and letting you know that everything is normal goes a really long way. And just having somebody to share the weight of decision making and, planning and everything like that is really valuable, in my opinion.
Totally, I agree. Speaking of, how would you help a mother stick to her birthing plan?
So sometimes that's normalizing the process, especially first-time parents. There's a lot of eagerness and excitement and anxiety and not really knowing what's coming next. And having somebody who has seen birth in all of its wild iterations and can tell you you're doing great, keep doing what you're doing, is a really big piece of just feeling confident in the process. And sometimes that also means that you have somebody that's there to advocate for you and that's there to kind of go to bat in what is a really exhausting emotional and physical experience. Like I mentioned before, I think it's really important for people to build a birth team that is as supportive and cohesive as possible. But sometimes there are nurses and obstetricians and people that you maybe don't have the best kind of relationship with in the birth space in the moment. And so sometimes I am there as an advocate and as somebody who can slow down conversations and can, pivot when needed, when the rest of the birth team doesn't seem as supportive. And it's really hard for parents to feel like they have to go up to bat for themselves in a really vulnerable space. And so, everything from just like making sure parents feel comfortable and confident to making sure that the rest of the team is on the agenda with the family. It can be tough sometimes, making sure that preferences are adhered to and communicated.
Yes, totally. I have been discussing a little bit like the various stages and phases of labor, and I know that there's a time when women start to really like turn inward and they get very quiet. And so if there's stuff happening during that time, it can be very hard to like sort of come out of that inward emotional state and advocate for yourself. So having someone who knows the plan and, you've developed this relationship with to truly communicate that to everyone else on the team is truly incredible, because I've definitely heard some stories of women getting in there being like, this is my plan. And the nurses being like, oh, but we'll just have this in case you want it. And you're like, no, no, I don't want it. Like, my plan is to not have it. I don't even want it near me because then I might even be more likely to choose it, but I don't want to choose it. I think that that's amazing that doulas can come in and really advocate for you, especially knowing you so well at that point in the process, hopefully, and then communicating that to your partner and the rest of your birthing team as well.
Exactly. I think it doesn't go discussed enough. Or it's not discussed enough that there are going to be people in your birth space that you've never met before, especially if you're birthing in a hospital, and especially if you're in a larger city where you might be meeting like 4 to 6 new nurses and pediatricians and PAs and interns and things like that. So sometimes I act as the gatekeeper if we've already discussed that my client doesn't want extra bodies in the room, just what's necessary. Sometimes I am literally asking people to leave if they're not needed. And sometimes I am, telling a nurse no and saying, ask her after this contraction what her preference is. And facilitating that conversation goes a really long way because it is a busy kind of day at the office for a lot of folks in that medical space. And that's not to say that they're not doing their job or doing their job poorly or something like that. But sometimes they are encountering folks who have preferences that they haven't worked with before. And so making sure that the whole team is cohesive is a really big step. And that's hard for partners and fathers to do sometimes because they haven't had to have those conversations. They sometimes don't feel like they have the platform to do that in a vulnerable and exhausted space like giving birth.
Totally, that makes a lot of sense. Speaking of some challenges, have you had any challenging birthing experiences, and how did you handle it and support the mother through that?
Of course. I mean, no birth goes without some challenges in some ways or another. I think most births pivot from the original plan or preferences just because babies need and want what babies need and want. And I will say that I'm very glad that there's been very few true emergencies, like life or death moments. And I think the media does a really good job at making us afraid of these like fire alarm emergency moments in birth. And that's usually not the case. It's usually things aren't going to plan. Baby might not be tolerating something. There might be a medical need that wasn't foreseen before in your pregnancy. And so, I've worked with folks who a medical complication arises in their last week of pregnancy. They do need an induction or medical augmentation that they weren't planning or hoping for. I've worked with folks who were, planning and doing a home birth, and then medical complications made it so that we did have to pivot. And I think it's really important when talking about things like this, that it, like I said, it's not usually this huge emergency rush. There's usually conversations that happen and time to make choices and make sure that everybody's informed and knows risks and benefits. But, without disclosing anybody's like medical information, there have been many times where people were planning for A and we ended up at B. And really just making sure that people know why something is happening, know what the options are in that moment, and know what to expect on the other side of it is really the big piece of what I do when a hurdle comes up in labor. I think, like we talked about, having somebody who has seen the spectrum of normal and the spectrum of emergencies and the spectrum of having to make those pivots and can calmly have a conversation about, hey, it looks like we might have to do X, Y, and Z. Here are the options in front of us. What path do you want to take here? If we choose this path, this is what it's going to look like in the coming hours and days. That's really where the value lies in working with an experienced birth support team.
That's amazing. And I love how calmly you put it and very clearly. It reminds me of when I talk to the kids at preschool. It's like, here are your options. Here's what you can do. And it's it's just funny to sort of be, in my mind, comparing it to that childlike state and all of that. So
yeah, that's oftentimes what it is, breaking it down. We're all kids at heart. And we all want to know what to expect, and we all want to feel like we're in the driver's seat of our experience. And that's really the goal with what I do, is making sure that people feel like even if a pivot has to happen, they are, still at the wheel of their experience.
Yeah, I love that. Do you have a personal birthing philosophy that you would like to share?
My personal birthing philosophy is freak what you feel. There is no wrong way to have a baby. There's no wrong way to be a parent. And I think people get lost in the world of shoulds quite a bit. And so when I talk to families and they're like, well, my friend worked with a doula, so I feel like I should too. And I'm like, let's get rid of that word should. If you want to have another person on your team, fantastic. If you want to have somebody to text at midnight when you're feeling anxious about something, then absolutely have that. A big thing that I try to do in working with families is put the power back in their hands. I don't have babies for people. I am not the superhero coming into the room to make things magically happen. I'm there to tie on the cape of the superhero that is the family, that is having their experience. Yeah, I always say it's not my horse to ride. I'm just there to teach you how to do it, and to help you figure out what's best for you. There's no one right way. You don't need to be a parent the same way that your parents did it. With parenthood especially, there's just so much anxiety and judgment and feeling like you have to do everything right all the time. I work with people who want to have planned cesareans. I work with people who want to like give birth in a field surrounded by fireflies. Everything in between is awesome. I just want to make sure that people know what their options are and feel like they can exercise their options.
I love that. That's amazing. Moving a little bit into the postpartum life then, how can a doula assist with postpartum life and what might that look like?
So with postpartum support, I mean, it is very similar to birth support in the fact that the goal is to help people figure out how they want to be parents. And again, you might be picturing something and get to the space, get to the time and be like, that's actually not going to work for me. You might be planning to breastfeed or bottle feed and then get to the experience and be like, actually, this other plan is working for me now that I'm in it. And there's, a whole other teammate that when we're preparing for the postpartum space, we haven't met this other person yet. Easing the journey and easing the transition is really the goal of postpartum doulas. And to be able to have like a soft place to land in a continuity of care of getting to know you, ideally when you're pregnant and you're planning for your experience, and then be able to weigh in as things are happening. Again, in an unbiased way is really what doulas bring to the table. And with hands-on things, every day looks a little bit different with a newborn. My first visit with a family postpartum and, the first couple of days that they're home might be working on a lot of lactation support, working on different feeding plans and positions, and potentially getting like other support in like an IBCLC or a body worker. And as their experience changes, I'm also supporting the parents. I'm making sure that people are fed, are hydrated, the dishes are done, the laundry is folded. I think one of the hallmarks of a good postpartum doula is seeing what needs to be done and just doing it. Taking care of things for parents so that they can just focus on being with their child. And sometimes that also is childcare. Sometimes that's hanging out with older siblings. Sometimes that is taking care of the newborn so parents can have that one-on-one time with older siblings who are also going through a big change. Sometimes that's hanging out with a newborn and preparing a meal while parents take a nap and take a shower. So we're there as kind of like the amorphous glue that holds everything together to make sure that needs are getting met. And also emotionally, sometimes I just talk to people. Sometimes I just listen. I've spent many postpartum shifts just on the couch with a baby on my lap while parents are eating soup and they're talking to me about how they're feeling. And having somebody who's unbiased and who can be like, wow, yeah, that really sucks. And it's okay that it sucks. And we can talk through it and get it off your chest. I think there's a lot of value in that we kind of overlook when we're looking at new parents. Um, Everybody's always eager to ask, like, how's baby sleeping? Is baby gaining weight? And getting all these like fun stats and baby centric information. But parents are newly born too. And so giving them a safe spot to kind of land in their big transition is the kind of hallmark of postpartum support.
Yeah, I love that. I think that I look back on my time as a visitor to my friends who've had kids, and you're obviously so excited and they're excited. There's probably things that are on their minds now that I'm a little bit more immersed in it that they don't necessarily want to share because it can sound negative, and it's supposed to be like such a happy time. And so having someone like a doula who is unbiased and so willing to just listen and not judge you for like crazy things you might be feeling or hearing or seeing or thinking is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's funny because when we walk into a postpartum space, parents are so focused on their baby that it's often so baby centric and so, talking about like how they're eating, how they're sleeping, but not really how that's affecting them. Like, what is a sustainable situation for a new parent, and what's working and what's not working. And I think just being asked, like, how are you doing? What do you need right now? Can be overwhelming for some parents. It can be like, oh, wow, I actually didn't even stop to think about like, what do I need? From just like a shower or a good meal or somebody to like cry and laugh with for a little bit. Having that space to still be honored as an individual is really important.
Absolutely. I fully agree. What do you think women in general should know for birth and postpartum?
That you have more options than you think. It doesn't have to look one certain way. Um, and I wish that I could give an answer to this that's like, you should know how to swaddle a baby, or you should know what the best position to push is, and have something that's like a very tangible tool or something like that. Again, the most important part of your journey is that it's yours. It's not anybody else's. It's not your OB's. It's not your mother's. Um, it's your unique journey. And there are probably options for your experience that you haven't even thought of yet. And so talk to somebody who has seen a lot of things and has a breadth of information and who is invested in helping you figure out what you need. Because again, the shoulds get thrown around really quickly when we talk to our friends, when we talk to our parents, when giving advice in the perinatal space. There's a lot of, well, I did this. Well, I wish I did that. And that's not really advice. That's actually you when you're talking to people. It's them kind of giving their experience as information. And I think it's really important to sit down and process with yourself. What do I want out of this experience? How do I want to be a parent? How do I want to move through my birth experience? And the one thing that people really need to know is that there's always another option out there. There's a lot more choice than I think we're encouraged to explore initially.
I really love that. Why do you think having a doula on your support team throughout these stages would be beneficial?
To take the load off, to take the load of decision making and trying to be the researcher and the parent and all of the things all of the time. Your doula is there to take some of the weight for your whole family, for the birthing person, for partners, for any primary caregiver. Having somebody that is invested in just getting to know you and what you want, and also has knowledge and evidence and experience behind them goes a really long way. Having a team member who wants the best for you and also wants to help you figure out what you think the best is invaluable, in my opinion.
What do you think is the most important aspect of the relationship between a mother and a doula?
Trust. And that is why, certifications and trainings and things like that are valuable and, important, especially person to person and goal to goal, but having somebody that you trust, that will go to bat for you in a hard moment, and who is a safe place emotionally, um, is really valuable, because you can have a doula that's been to 300 births and has 100 certifications and all of this continuing education, but if you don't feel like you can talk to them about hard things, there's no use in having them on your team. And I think that's also really important when talking about care provider choice. Like, just because an OB has been an OB for 55 years and they've got 700 babies or something like that, does not mean that they're the best person for you. That just means that they have experience in doing this one thing their way. And so having somebody that you trust and you feel calm around is really important when selecting your doula. So I always encourage people to chat with at least like 2 to 5 doulas, like at bare minimum, and see who you feel most comfortable around. See who you feel like you're looking forward to talking to them and getting to know them and opening up to them.
How would someone go about finding a doula?
Oh, there's so many different ways. There's agencies, there's, a blind Google, depending on where you're at, larger cities, like I'm in New York City, we have a lot of agencies and kind of like matching services and collectives. So you might have a ton of choice depending on where you're at. Or there might just be a couple of doulas who are kind of passed around the community by word of mouth, depending on where you live. And so ask your friends who have kids. I think if you're going to Google anything in your pregnancy, Google your city and doula and see who's around. And yeah, cast a wide net. It takes some digging to find somebody that you really jive with and who also has the experience that you're looking for and you're comfortable with. Do a little dive into Google and see who's around based on your city or your county. And depending on your care provider, a lot of times midwives and obstetricians also have referral lists. If you go to a prenatal masseuse or a chiropractor, they most likely have worked with some doulas. So ask around. Anybody in the perinatal space most likely knows a doula.
Amazing. Can you let all of the Bitesized listeners know where we can find you and where to follow you, all of that fun stuff?
So I go by Moon Child Doula. You can follow me on Instagram at Moon Child Doula. Moonchilddoula.com is my website. I am based in Queens, New York. I work in all the 5 boroughs and sometimes in New Jersey as well. Follow me, email me, hit me up. I'm happy to talk to anybody near and far going through their parenthood journey.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Allie, for coming on Bitesized today. It's been wonderful to have you, and I hope the listeners at home feel the same.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely to meet you, and it was wonderful chatting.
Thank you again to Allie for coming on Bitesized. It's been so wonderful to have you. A happy doula day to you and all of the doulas out there. Moms everywhere, thank you for your support, and I thank you for doing the Lord's work. Now, jumping back into building your support team, I'm moving on to the support of your friends and family. If you're lucky enough to have a supportive partner by your side, this person better spoil the crap out of you. I'd say discuss before you get pregnant, but for sure as you get close to birth and postpartum, what you expect from them. What will feeds look like? How are you hoping they support you in birth? Are they on board with the birthing plan? How will you handle visitors? Speaking of visitors, coming up in April, I'm going to have 2 episodes on this very topic. The first will be on how to decide what you expect of visitors and boundaries, and the second will be perfect to send to those you think will be visiting you. It will contain what to expect of them and ways they can support you. Now, this might sound a little crazy, but it's not always something people think of before the time comes, so they'll be very helpful to help you prepare. Those episodes will for sure help you figure out which family members and friends you are excited to have to support you after birth. Now, some people you might want to consider are also a house cleaner, a babysitter, or grocery delivery or meal prep service. If you have other children, having a babysitter or a trusted family member who can assist with school pickup or taking them and spending time with them so that you can spend uninterrupted time with your newborn are going to be super important and very helpful. A house cleaner may also come in handy if your partner has to continue to work or you are unable to engage in physical tasks, like if you have a C-section and need to recover. Let's be honest though, don't we all just want someone else to clean our house always? These days are special and fleeting, so these tasks are going to feel unimportant in comparison to those sweet babies, so freeing up your time is also a big part of this stage. Now obviously, if you can afford this, I would say go for it. A dog walker may also come in handy if you have a pet that will need walking. Again, if you are recovering from birth, this is something to consider. I'll mention this again in the future, but my husband and I live in a very small place, so having a deep freeze full of pre-prepped meals will never work for us. So a grocery delivery service or meal prep service or meal train organized by family and friends would be far more beneficial during these postpartum days than freezer meals. A house cleaning service or meal prep service is also something you can consider putting on your registry. These are very practical things to ask for, and while not as cute as a newborn onesie, will be far more appreciated in the moment. There you have it, friends. This is how you can start building your support team. This is the team that's going to help you through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, but especially postpartum. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. We would love to continue meeting at the dinner table. As a reminder, I do have some discount codes for you. I'm a partner of Needed. They're your one-stop shop for prenatal vitamins, iron, collagen, electrolytes, all sorts of things that you will need throughout this journey. My code is Bitesized for 20% off your order. Another company to consider is Ovary. They're a reproductive care essentials company providing you pregnancy tests, ovulation tests, and male fertility tests. And while you're probably closer to birth at this point, or starting your postpartum journey, you're probably not thinking about that. But I would encourage you to check them out because while you might be breastfeeding and your period has not returned yet, you can still get pregnant. Knowing while you're ovulating is going to come in handy. My code is Bitesized10 for 10% off your order. And in case no one has told you today, you look radishing. Bye! Although I am a certified holistic nutrition consultant, I am not your consultant. The information herein is purely for entertainment and educational purposes only and does not always apply to your specific needs. While I strive to provide you the most up-to-date information about nutrition, this is not a substitute for professional and medical advice, and you should definitely speak to your personal healthcare practitioner for advice tailored to you.